we are confined within this horrible play world. Like children playing tea parties and doctors and nurses and Mr. and Mrs. with one another. We must burst free from this, because this is wicked nonsense, and it is being put upon us in the desperate hope that we take it upon ourselves as our own garment. And it's not our own garment, it is being put upon us. It is not true, it is false. We are equal. Our relationships are true marriages, our families are true families, our lives are true unions, true lives. Marriage equality is not actually primarily about equality. The argument for LGBT, for equal marriages, is not primarily just an argument about, well, they've got it, we should. It's something more than that. What civil marriage does, because remember, this is just civil marriage, you can get married in God's eyes now, here, in Louisiana, in this church, whenever you so choose. Marriage is doing, and this is an important thing, it is saying that we as a society recognize this as valuable. Yes. We recognize this as something which is worthwhile, something which we will lift up as a community, yes, as an example, and as something to be applauded, something to be supported, something to be loved, something which we will put our weight behind. Now, we are saying to society at large that the time has come for you to recognize that what we have with one another is just that. It is something that is worthy of you putting your weight behind, something that is worthy of you supporting, protecting, nurturing, and giving certain rights and responsibilities to. That the time has come where there is ample evidence that you can see that the love we have for one another is just as good and true as the love that anybody else has for one another. Yes. That when you fall in love, it's the same damn thing. Yes. Right. Yes. That when we get married, it's the same thing. It's a marriage. Every time I perform a marriage between people of the same sex, when there are heterosexual bystanders, and it's the first time they've been to one, again and again you get this response. They come up and say, oh, it's a wedding. Because you can tell a wedding a mile off, can't you? It's a surprise to them to discover that just because it's two men or it's two women, my goodness, it's a wedding! I can sense it's a wedding, I can feel it's a wedding, I can see in their eyes that it's a wedding. We are our own best argument for everything. We're our own best argument to be accepted as a real church. We are our own best argument to be accepted as real families and real marriages. Which is why our opponents are ultimately doomed to failure. Amen. Because the more people know, the more they come onto our side. That's right. The more people see us, the better they like us. The more people see of our families, the greater the respect they have for us. The more they see of our church, they more understand that it is true Christianity, real Christianity, and not some watered-down excuse for either of them. I will be finishing soon. But I have to end with something which for me is bound up very closely in all this. Today is not just the National Equality March, it is also National Coming Out Day. Anything that detracts from the full humanity and opportunity for growth and joy and development fundamentally does violence to God's creation. Amen. Now there may be a list of reasons for it as long as you're on, but it still does violence to God's act of creation in each and every one of us as LGBT persons. And many straight people also have things for which they need to come out for as well. Coming out is a statement, first and foremost, that God will have God's way over the thoughts, ideas, and prejudices of family, friends, or misguided pastors. Yeah. Amen. As only the LGBT person who is seeking to come out fully knows the mind of God in their creation. Only that individual knows that their nature is inherent, and therefore it's our responsibility to inform the ignorant and to prevent more pain and suffering. You know, I was watching the march this afternoon, and there was a lady called Angela Davis. I don't know how many of you saw the speeches from the march in DC. My goodness, she was powerful. She said some things. She was talking about churches. She was specifically talking about African American churches, but the same thing applies across the board. And she said, we must end the practice whereby we allow our pastors and our churches to pimp us out for our talents and our resources and our time and our money. All the while they're preaching against sissies. Should be celibacy, and yet a conservative estimate, 75% of all his priests are gay men. 75%. He is no better in that respect than a pimp, because he is relying upon the talents and the time and the energy of all those people, all those priests, all those organists, all those music directors. Anything without them. And yet, because of cowardice, or maybe because of ignorance, he stood up and made a statement like that. And yet he knew that the man who for 5 years was his personal chaplain was married to another man. And that his other bishop had been 14 years in a relationship with another man. 14 years living in the bishop's palace with him. And yet still he stood up and made a statement like that. Occasionally, there are times when my human brokenness has to breaks, and I think, dear God in heaven. And that is one of those occasions that sometimes we have to speak the truth. Because otherwise people will be skirting around the elephant in the middle of our sanctuaries from now till doomsday. There is no alternative to full legal equality. Two-speed doesn't work. That's right. We've seen this across the world. Same but equal but separate certainly doesn't work. I mean, my goodness, of all the people who should know that, it's people down here in the South. Amen. You know, in 1807, the United Kingdom banned the slave trade throughout the British Empire. And it did so as an incremental step to getting rid of it. Everyone accepted that the institution of slavery was just horrible and awful, that it was just something that had to go. But in order to make it palatable to the legislators, they said, well, we'll just start with a slave trade. So, in 1806, they banned it. A great and a wonderful thing. But do you know when slavery as an institution was finally got rid of? 1834! Things don't happen immediately when you do them incrementally. Look at Don't Ask, Don't Tell. 1993, wasn't it? And here we are, nearly 2010, and people are still being thrown out of the armed forces for wanting to be able to give their life to their country. Still, we are being told that American Marines and American sailors and American airmen are uniquely fragile. And that unlike those in the Netherlands or in Israel or in Canada or in Brazil or in the Great Britain or in Germany or in France or in Italy or in Spain, the world will come tumbling in if they are forced to spend time with people who are lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender. And sometimes we allow people to continue with the most outrageous nonsense for years and years and years, almost as if we don't want to upset them. Well, look, they're clutching to that, you know. I mean, it's a straw they're clutching to. It's obviously a great comfort to them. I don't want to take it away from them. I mean, sometimes I believe that this is the attitude.